Welcome to the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, episode number 127. Stay hungry. Stay foolish. Steve Jobs.
Broadcasting from the back alley in Hollywood, it's the Indie Film Hustle Podcast, where we show you how to survive and thrive as an indie filmmaker in the jungles of the film biz. And here's your host, Alex Ferrari.
Welcome, my indie film hustlers, to another episode of the Indie Film Hustle Podcast. I am your humble host, Alex Ferrari. Today's show is sponsored by Distribber. If you guys are trying to get your movies or feature films or even shorts onto Netflix, Hulu, Google Play, iTunes, Fandango, or any of the major streaming services, Distribber finally lets you in without having to go through a traditional distributor. And you keep 100% of all the revenues and your rights. So if you want more information, head over to indiefilmhustle.com/sellmyfilm. That's indiefilmhustle.com/sellmyfilm. The show is also sponsored by Hollywood Camera Work. If you guys are interested in learning how to direct actors and become a actor's director, Hollywood Camera Work has developed an amazing master course called Directing Actors. And it is almost 30 hours. And I've taken this course, and it is by far the most comprehensive directing actors course I have ever seen. So if you want to get access to this course, head over to hollywoodcamerawork.com and use the coupon code HUSTLE to get 30% off. That's hollywoodcamerawork.com and use the coupon code HUSTLE. So guys, today on the show, we've got Mark Stolaroff. I always say his last name horribly. Mark, please forgive me. But Mark, I've been trying to get Mark on the show for a while now. We've walked in a lot of the same circles here in LA, but we've never actually met. And I've been wanting to get him on the show for a long time. He runs a school called the No Budget Film School. And he is a very accomplished producer. And he's produced many award-winning films, many in Sundance, at South by. And he's just a wealth of information on how to get shit done on a budget. So, of course, this is why I wanted to have him on the show, so he can share some knowledge bombs with the Indie Film Hustle tribe. So without any further ado, here is my conversation with Mark Stolaroff. I'd like to welcome to the show Mark Stolaroff. Did I master? I was close. Stolaroff? Sorry.
Stolaroff.
I apologize, man. Thanks for being on the show, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, it was my pleasure. I'm excited to be on.
We know a lot of the same people. We've I think walked a lot of the same dirt paths here in LA. And it's just funny that we've actually never met other than this time right now.
Very odd.
It is a small town, isn't it?
It is, and this community is small. Certainly indie film community. I mean, relatively small compared to the whole town.
Right, exactly. But so let's get into it. So how did you get into this crazy business that we find ourselves in today?
Well, I think I'm significantly older than you, and I started out, as a kid with an 8mm camera kind of, thing, which was probably my initial kind of foray. I was one of those kids in school that now all kids are like this. I think everybody's kids that I know are doing this, are making films and cutting on a pro. But back in the 70s and early 80s, in high school, no one was making films in school. Shoot things instead of doing book reports and that kind of stuff. So I made these little films in high school, and then went to University of Texas. I wanted to do film. I mean, I thought that's what I wanted to do, but I was too scared. And it wasn't really a career that people did, although the University of Texas had a really great undergraduate film program. And I majored in business, which was something that, you kind of majored in. And then I snuck over and did film classes and made some films in college on 16mm, and really loved that and thought I was pretty good at it, although I just didn't have the confidence to really just say, oh, this is what I want to do. So I left and did 2 years of investment banking, which was something that, I was kind of, I was in an honors business program at Texas, and it was kind of an easy gig for me to get. I worked in New York. And then when that 2-year analyst program was up, I kind of thought I'd earned some credit with my family, and a friend of mine that I grew up with, that we used to do skits together and stuff like that. He had started this theater in Fort Worth, and he was talking about coming to Houston, and I had moved to Houston from New York, and we were talking about starting a live theater. I thought that sounds like an awesome idea. So we built.
There's a lot of money there. There's a lot of money there.
No, it's nothing about money. I tell you, that's the thing. That's my whole career. So we started this live theater, which was a total blast. I mean, I was the managing director. He was the artistic director. We wrote a lot of our own shows. I mean, he was really the writer, but I got to co-write some stuff and act, which, you know, I'm not a very good actor, but I liked doing it. And I would do like the sound design for the plays. And it was a very creative business position. And we did that for 4 or 5 years, or I did that with him for 4 or 5 years. We had, I think I produced like 40 plays. We did we had a show in the Edinburgh Fringe Festival, which was the only show from Texas in the whole Fringe Festival, which was fun. And then at some point I was like, this wasn't what I wanted to do. I wanted to make films as a filmmaker. And I had been keeping up with these kind of no budget El Mariachi, and it was really probably Clerks. I went to see Clerks at the Houston Film Festival in early '94, and I had decided right before that I was going to leave the theater and stay in Houston and try to make films. And I was kind of helping with the theater, but I had left. Saw Clerks and met Kevin Smith at the festival before anything before he was anybody knew who he was, and I thought, man, this is the kind of movie I want to make. I can make this. I have $30,000 saved up. I can
right,
do this.
Right.
And so I had worked on a couple of local things, and then just realized I couldn't stay in LA, and I moved. Couldn't stay in Houston to do that, and I moved to LA at the end of '94 to pursue my dream as being a no budget film director. I just those kind of movies appealed to me as a filmmaker, and I thought they were doable, and I kind of, felt like I could do it. And it was very similar to the kind of theater we were doing, which is very DIY. And so, you get into town, you got to get work. I started working at Corman. One thing leads to another, and, you start going down this path, and my path has been, kind of a little nutty the whole way around. But I ended up meeting Peter Broderick in '97 at South by Southwest. I was going every year to South by Southwest from the very, first year in '94. I would go back to, to Texas and go to that festival, which was so much fun. And he had just announced this company called Next Wave Films that IFC was financing. And it was basically a company that was going to give finishing funds to these same kinds of movies that I wanted to make. And in fact, Robert Rodriguez and Kevin Smith and all of these filmmakers that I was like, wanting to be like, were on the board of advisors.
Nice.
Steven Soderbergh and all this. And I was like, oh my God, I've got to work for this guy. I don't know who this guy is. He was at the festival. I went up to him after a panel and said, hey, I think I want to work for you. I gave him a resume. We ended up, meeting when I got back to LA. And I think I kind of overwhelmed him. I had so much material and so much things I had been thinking about and working on that, I think he had to hire me. I was like the perfect choice. And,
right.
So I was like the first person he hired full time, and I worked for pretty cheap. So it was an easy decision. And so I worked with him for 6 years at Next Wave Films, which was just like kind of the perfect job for me because, I'm probably more of a producer from taking like a business background or whatever, but I'm like to be hands-on. And when you're making these kinds of films, you can be very hands-on without being the director. And still be very creative if, depending on who your partners. And it was like this kind of dream job where I was actually getting a paycheck to work in this part of the film business that no one gets paid in. I mean, I know because I've been in it for so long, you just can't get paid doing it. You have to succeed and then move out of it, and I never really wanted to move out of it. I really like this kind of filmmaking and I love these kind of movies. I have no dream or aspiration to make Doctor Strange or whatever, and so I've stayed in it, probably longer than I should have from a kind of career
practical
standpoint.
Right, practical
standpoint, yeah. But anyway, so that's, when Next Wave was a great experience. We basically gave finishing funds to, our thing was we gave finishing funds to exceptional low budget films, and for 6 years, 3,000 or 4,000, movies were submitted to us from all over the world by filmmakers of all different, kinds and, levels of talent and that kind of thing. And some very talented people that we got involved with, like Chris Nolan and Joe Carnahan and Amir Bar-Lev, and some very talented people that we didn't get involved in that I met through that job, like David Gordon Green and Craig Brewer and Mark Forster and, any number of people that were making films at that time that submitted stuff to us. Those are pretty big.
Those are pretty big names.
Yeah, now they are. Yeah, it's fun, meet these people at the beginnings of their career, and we were really in a great position, in the indie film world. We had money to give, and that made us important, to people.
Yeah,
and we got invited to places, and
Right.
I was always on panels and stuff. As I was always representing the finance people.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And then when Next Wave closed and I was no longer the guy with money, it's like you get tossed out on the sidewalk a little bit. But
now, why did they close, by the way? Is there a specific reason?
It's Peter has a kind of big discussion, he can kind of do a whole discussion on that. I mean, it really kind of had to do with just the changing, when we started in 97, the independent film world was a certain way. And then by 2002, it evolved, and it had kind of the studios and, kind of mini majors or whatever had taken over that space, and it just changed a lot. The distribution became harder, and it was a great business model, but it was a very difficult business model in terms of I think the original business model was, we would give, let's say, $100,000 to a film, and then they would do all the work. The filmmakers would just take our money and do all the work, and we would rep the film in a major film festival, and it would get picked up by a distributor, and we'd get an advance, and that would pay us back, and then we would kind of be able to move on to the next film. And it's like it barely ever worked like that. I think the Joe Carnahan's film Blood, Guts, Bullets, and Octane was probably the closest film that really worked like that, where I worked very closely with Joe and his team finishing the film, so it wasn't like we were just hairs and money. I mean, I had to oversee that, and I did a lot of work on that movie. And then it went to Sundance and got picked up, and then advance was, more than what we had spent. And we kind of didn't have to do a ton of work after that, but every other film was a ton of work. I mean, Following which was very much a success financially for us, was 4 years of very hard work,
Wow.
Fun work, it was great working with Chris, and we worked very closely together once we got involved. But he went on and started doing Memento. We were still working on his film.
Right. He had already moved on.
Yeah, he got to move on. So I think it was just more of a time commitment, and we weren't able to do as many films as we wanted to, and it was getting harder to kind of get advances that would pay back. You had to really work to get the money back. It was just, number of factors probably.
Well, the film, independent film in generally is not it's a very difficult business model. Unless you're smart.
You can come up with a lot of different business models, and all of them are difficult to make work. I mean, slate models. One of the first things I did after Next Wave was work with a gentleman that I met at Next Wave named Ron Judkins, who had made a film that we repped called The High Line that was at Sundance in 99. And he's probably better known as a production sound mixer. He does all of Spielberg's movies, and he's won 2 Academy Awards. He's been nominated 5 times, and really great guy and a talented filmmaker on his own right. I mean, in addition to being a smart film guy and a great sound mixer, we had started this company called Antic Pictures, which was going to be a slate. We were going to do a slate of $200,000, films, and I love that idea, and especially at that time, I think it probably could have worked. Which was Henry Barrial's second film, and Henry's my regular, collaborator. I had met Henry at when I was at Next Wave. We did his first film, Somebody, which was a $3,000 shot on Canon XL1 movie with no crew, completely improvised. It was about 4 years before anybody had ever heard the word mumblecore. Right. It was exactly that. It was kind of proto mumblecore film, and it got into dramatic competition at Sundance. And I worked on that film in post, and was friends with Henry, and then he approached me with this film True Love when Ron and I were trying to get Antic Pictures off the ground, and Ron and Henry and I decided, well, let's make this movie. We'll make it for $50,000. Let's each put in kind of equal amount of money and make it. And we ended up making that movie, but we never ended up really doing Antic as a slate. We still kind of used the name, but he moved on and did his things, and I moved on and did my things. And basically, my thing from that time on has been working with Henry as a filmmaker. Although I have done other films without, I'm finishing a film right now that Adam Ripp directed called Devil's Whisper, and I've done other movies as well. And then I also started, No Budget Film School around that time, 2005. So that's kind of been my thing since next wave closed.
Now with Henry specifically, I know you when I was I kind of discovered you when you guys started doing the whole crowdfunding for DriverX, which is Henry's latest movie. And I think if I do remember correctly, that amazing crowd, it was a really great crowdfunding video, by the way.
Thank you.
It was really cool. You were telling the story, or Henry was telling the story that, he was between projects and he needed money, and he was, and he went to start doing, Uber. I think it was Uber or Lyft at the time, which I found really, refreshing to that someone like that has been at Sundance, has won 1 million of awards. And like, this is the reality of the film business. Like, just because you're at Sundance or just because you're at these doesn't mean that you're just, living up in the hills like Entourage. It doesn't work that way. You've got to keep hustling and keep working. And
it happens for some people, but
it's the lottery ticket.
No.
Yeah. It does happen for some. And that's what Hollywood shows you, is that they always show, like I always say, they always show you the lottery ticket winner. They never show you
100 million,
the 100 million people that paid and didn't get anything. So with DriverX, you raised some money through a crowdfunding campaign, and I know you've done multiple crowdfunding campaigns that have been very successful. Can you give us any tips on how to run a successful campaign?
Yeah, I mean, in a short amount of time, if I had to kind of boil it down, that's the tricky part. So I feel like, let me think about this. If I was going to boil it down, I think maybe the first thing that I would think about doing a crowdfunding campaign is, I think of crowdfunding not as raising money. I mean, it's a great way to raise money, and you don't have to give it back, which is nice. It's a gift to your investors, essentially. Mm-hmm. But it's a marketing thing. And I'm not a marketing person, and I've met people that are really good at internet marketing and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Certainly better at it than I am. And I'm not, I know enough to know how I don't, know that much. But it's a great way to market your film because people pay you to market to them, which is kind of, brilliant. So if you think of crowdfunding as marketing, and really everybody who's making an independent film, and really, I mean, almost every film period. I mean, studios don't have to do this with big movies, but certainly people at even kind of higher level indie films, like millions of dollar films, have to do this. But if you're making, hundreds of $1,000 films, you've got to be doing this, where you're looking at who's going to watch your movie, because no distributor is going to come along and pay you in advance and take your movie from you, and you can walk away and they're going to do all this great work and get your movie out there. It so rarely happens. And if you've interviewed enough filmmakers who've told you about, they handed it over to a distributor who didn't give it an advance. They didn't do anything special. They did a day and date release, and they never saw any money out of it, and all that kind of stuff. I mean, I don't want to get into all that. Yeah. Anyway, we can talk about distribution later. But the smart filmmakers and the filmmakers that have these interesting stories, and I think of like Tom Putnam, who I've had in my class. He's a friend of mine who did this film Burn, this documentary about Detroit firemen a few years ago. Kind of the classic. There's a lot of these examples, but certainly that's one of my favorites, of someone who really worked at finding their niche audience before the film was finished, and then when they didn't get that great deal at Tribeca, even though they won the audience award, and they said, well, why would we give our movie away to this distributor for $50,000 or whatever when we already know that there's an audience out there that we can reach ourselves, and they had been working on aggregating that audience, and so they built this whole self-distribution strategy around going to that audience, directly. And, and there were partners and people along the way. But so I feel like every filmmaker has to be doing this. I'm not obviously the first person to say this, has to be looking at who are those audiences that have to see your movie. They're not art house audiences. It's not demographics. It's specific niche audiences that have to see it. I was at a panel the other day, and they were talking about a hula hoop documentary, and, I don't need to see a hula hoop documentary. But
right. Maybe in the 50s.
Yeah. If you hula hoop competitively, and apparently there are a lot of people that do that, you have to see that movie. Does it matter how good it is? No, it doesn't matter at all.
Right.
It could be the worst hula hoop movie ever made. Mm-hmm. You have to see it. It's not discretionary,
Or a wiener dog movie.
Yeah, or
doc.
Yeah. Yeah. So if you own a wiener dog, you got to see that movie. So, each filmmaker, and it's harder for narrative films. There's no question about that. It's easier for a documentary about Detroit firemen to go, oh, we're just going to hit up firemen. They have to see this movie. Mm-hmm. We've tried to do this with each film. I mean, we really tried with Pig, which was 3 films ago. It was more complicated to do that with Pig, for reasons I won't get into, just the subject matter and whatever. But with DriverX, which is about an Uber driver, it's like, okay, easy enough. Uber drivers, people who drive for, who are ride shares for Uber and Lyft, might want to see this movie. It's about an Uber driver. It's written and directed by someone who actually drove for Uber for over a year.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
It's a very authentic, honest take on that experience. So it's not Will Ferrell's version of it, which I'm, don't know what will be like, but I'm sure it won't be. Mm-hmm. Depiction of it, unless Will Ferrell's been driving for a year and I don't know about that. But who else? Stay-at-home dads. Our lead character is a stay-at-home dad. Our lead actor is on Better Call Saul, and there's Better Call Saul fans. We have other actors on other TV shows. So you start to kind of think about, who are these audiences? My friends, my family members, the other people involved with the cast and crew's friends and family members. These are people that are going to want to see your film. So I build all my crowdfunding campaigns from that. I say, who do I want to reach, and how can I reach them? And I'm going to reach them with this crowdfunding campaign, and they're going to give me money. And the reason crowdfunding campaign is such a great opportunity to reach them is that you want to build this audience up before you're ready to premiere your film. I mean, by the time you're ready to premiere your film, for distribution, not at the first film festival, you want to already have that huge list of, emails, addresses, and Facebook likes and Twitter followers and all that stuff, right? But it's hard to get people excited about your movie before it premieres. I mean, you can show them clips maybe, or there are different things you can try to do. But I think there's like 3 or 4 times in a film's life that you can create energy around your film. Mm-hmm. One is when you start making it. You tell all your friends, we're shooting tomorrow, we're shooting our movie, and everybody gets all excited, right? And then we got into Sundance or South by Southwest. We're world premiering our film at a film festival. Mm-hmm. People get excited about that. And then we're premiering the film for distribution to the world.
Mm-hmm. Releasing it, right?
Releasing it to the world, for commercial, purposes. And kind of before you do that and before you do the festivals, it's nice to have people already knowing about your movie. So the crowdfunding is like a 4th opportunity to create energy around your film. And it's one of the best ones because it's very limited. It's 30 days. And everybody knows it's 30 days. I only need you to get excited and post and do all these things for me for 30 days, and that's it. And then in that 30-day period, what do I want to do? I want to get some money. I want to collect some email addresses, which is how many backers do you have? Because you're going to get an email address from every backer. I want to build up my social media. So I want to get followers and Instagram, whatever, and Facebook likes. I want to do all those things during this 30-day period. And Kickstarter's, I think, one of the best ways. It's one of to create energy around your film, to reach out to all those people, to have all these friends and people, helping you reach those other people that you don't know. And we did. I think that I thought we could have done so much better on this campaign. There were whole avenues that we didn't really reach, but I thought we did. I was really excited about how well we did with people I did not know, because I didn't do very well with people I do know. In fact, because I have a huge mailing list. Right. I have all my high school friends who all have money, and college friends who all have money, and I have like thousands of email addresses of people who know me. And I wrote a blog article about this particular. I've written one about each one of my 3 campaigns, but I wrote one about this where I talk about how you can get email addresses, and which I gotten from this guy who calls himself the Kickstarter guy, Justin
right.
Giddings, and I talk all about that on my blog, but you can get email addresses from your Facebook friends and LinkedIn and all this kind of stuff, and so I had this huge list, but I actually didn't what's the internet term? I didn't if you send out 10,000 emails and only 3 people respond, what's that? What's the
open rate?
The open rate, or the beyond the open rate, the click rate, or the
click-through rate.
Or when you actually get them to do something rate, whatever that's called. There's a term for that.
Call to action.
Something like that. Anyway, so I mean that that was probably one of my biggest disappointments was just, I got, there were so many people that I knew that I emailed personally that didn't give me money that hadn't given me money before. And I kind of felt like they would and, whatever. But there were just so many strangers and people who gave a lot of money, like thousands of dollars that I did not know.
How much did you raise on DriverX? What was it?
We raised $41,000 on Kickstarter and then another 10 outside of Kickstarter that was donation, but it was not through the platform.
That's
so
nice.
50,000. It's not, it's not world breaking or anything like that. But I was, considering how busy I was producing another movie at the time, and I was pretty busy, and I really wanted to have another month of prep. I think if I'd had that month of prep, I could have done way better. And then we didn't even pursue like press, which is a whole other thing that I've never done, that other people have done very successfully, where they go out and they reach out to, get publicity. And there's companies that email you about that. Like you can pay them $500 and they'll, put out press releases. I've never done that. And I don't know any specific companies that I've heard like really work. So I just was a little, tentative to do that. But I mean, looking back, I probably would have done it because I think it was a story that I think maybe would have gotten picked up, the Uber thing, and all that. So, but I was, again, very happy. And so, once you have these groups, these constituencies, I call them, that you want to reach out to, then you build everything around that. You build your video around your constituencies. And if our video is very long, it's like 6 minutes long or whatever.
It was, yeah. You told us don't ever do one as long as this.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, you just, but every moment in there has a purpose and has a reason, and every part of it is a call to some constituents, whether it be a fan of, Better Call Saul or, my high school friends, or, when our lead actor talks about all the shows he's been on, it's partly for his fans, but also for my friends back home that'll think that's cool, that aren't in the film business or whatever. So,
right.
So people go, oh, I think it's too long. You should cut out that part. And I'm like, I can't cut that part out because I need that for that group. I can't cut out this part because I need it for this group that I'm trying to reach, So
it worked.
Yeah. I mean, I think it worked. I mean, again, it's always, things can always be shorter, but your rewards should be built around your constituencies, your video, your text, on the page, the things that you're doing, how you're reaching them. And so all of that, that's kind of my big thing. It's when you kind of follow that lead, I think it helps guide, the way you create all your materials and the way you do everything. When people are like, I don't know what rewards to do. Well, there's standard rewards, but then you need to be thinking about, what are the Better Call Saul fans that I'm trying to reach? What do they want? And I want to give them something at $15. I want to give them something at $80, and I want to give them something at $2,500, which is, there was a super duper fan, we had a script that was signed by all these like big time people, and, whatever, we were giving away the whole bunch of stuff at $2,500 for the kind of super duper Better Call Saul fan, But if you were just, someone who didn't have $2,500, but you wanted to get involved, we had something kind of nice at $15. It didn't cost us anything, it was a digital reward. So.
Now, what was the biggest lesson you learned when shooting DriverX?
Oh man. So I make this mistake every movie where I try to do too much. I wear too many hats. In fact, I do a presentation about the making of the film Pig, and I added up like 23 hats I wore, and some of those were like smaller hats, and some of them were like they were big hats. I was the only one doing that particular thing. And so I always said I would never do that again, and then of course I did it again with most of Pig. We shot most of DriverX. We shot DriverX in several chunks, which we often do. This time we had to do it because our lead actor was going back to New Mexico to shoot, and we would shoot around, his schedule. So the first chunk, which was 5 days of shooting, I did have help. I had a bunch of interns. I had a very small paid crew. I don't remember how many people we paid, but it was 4 or 5 people maybe or something. And then a lot of interns, people that were not young interns, like older people who were like from my No Budget Film School list who were helping out. And it was nice having that help. And then that was like all the stuff we shot at the house. Cause he's married, he has 2 kids, the lead character. And, so there's a lot of things that take place at his house with his wife and kids and stuff. And then we had all the driving stuff, which we shot a few months later, which is a very completely different type of shooting. And the crew was kind of different. And, we're not shooting with a process trailer, obviously.
No, that's for rich people.
Yeah, exactly. That's for the $200,000 movies.
Exactly. That's just crazy.
Budget movies. Yeah. So, but we had a terrific DP, Daniel Lynn, who had done a couple shoots with driving stuff that we got a chance to look at and saw how he did the rigging, and we basically kind of mirrored what he'd done on these short films that he'd done. So in that one, I just was the entire production department. I was the first AD. I was the producer, the first AD, the second AD, the PA.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
I was literally the only production person. I mean, I had a little bit of help in a couple of, in some certain instances, but it was brutal. It was just brutal. But I was sending out the press, the call sheet. We would shoot all night, and I'd get home, and I would be downloading the media because I was the media manager,
of course,
and desperately trying to stay awake to send out the call sheet so that people knew who the hell, who was coming and where they were going the next day. And I was falling asleep. And the only way I got through that, actually, I used this program called Lightspeed, which is kind of an online production management, cloud-based production management program they're a sponsor for my class. And I really, that program saved me. There's no way I would have been able to make the movie without Lightspeed, because it pre-populates the call sheet with your schedule. As long as your schedule is correct, it kind of pre-populates there's a little tweaking you do, and then you just tick off names that are already in already in the computer that you're going to be sending it to, and it just makes it a lot easier. I would never have been able to kind of build a real call sheet, on Excel or something, at 7 a.m. when I'd been up for, 20 hours or whatever, and then was going to get 3 hours and then had to get back up and, whatever. I mean, it was just brutal. I don't know. I can't do that anymore.
So let me ask you a question though, Mark. You've been doing this for a few years now, and you obviously love this crazy. I mean, because I've heard the word brutal at least 10 times in this interview. So with that said, either you're a masochist or you actually really love it in a weird way. And believe me, I feel you, because I'm a filmmaker as well. And, I have a wife who is not in the business, and she's gotten used to the crazy. And the only reason she's gotten used to the crazy is because I've been able to actually build a business around my filmmaking hobby, which is post-production and now indie film hustle. But it's lunacy, and I know, but you must love it. And when do you ever ask yourself, why do I keep doing this?
No, I do love it. And I didn't want to do it that way. I wanted to hire a first AD, and I could not find anybody. When we had a very short time frame when our actor said, "Oh, I'm here. I'm going to be back," because it's all top secret on Better Call Saul. We never knew what his schedule was, and I had to kind of quickly pull together a crew. And again, it was a small crew, so but I could not find a first AD. And I mean, I firsted in the past and, all that stuff. And I thought I could do it. And there was a point in the shoot where it was very, once we're driving around and, we're out in the car and we've got it all rigged up and the actors in the car and whatever, it was fun and it was okay. It was just, it was doing the craft service and the walkies. And
that was cool. Lunch. That was cool like 10 years ago, maybe. I feel you 100%.
10 years ago,
a few years. I completely agree with you. I'm like, at a certain point,
if I'm saving money, I feel a little bit better about things. That's because that's just still the Jewish person in me or something. I don't know. The No Budget Film School guy in me. But it was, it was brutal. But yes, I know I love it. But I'm kind of a control freak probably too. And then I told you before we started, the official conversation, that I have a horrible memory. And I think it's like, I forget how horrible it is. And I go right back in it, and
do you have any kids?
No.
Okay. So I'll just give you, I
have 5 kids. Big, the house.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'll give you a perfect example of that with the whole memory thing. When you first have a child, it is the most brutal thing you can, like the no sleep, the sleep deprivation, the beatings, I mean, like they just rip your life apart.
And the woman, I mean, this thing coming out of her body,
I'm just talking about the baby.
Apart,
I haven't even talked about the wife. Yeah. I'm just talking about, so this whole process of 6 months, a year, no sleeping and the eating and the pooping and and it's brutal, absolutely brutal. Then passes like 3 years, and then you completely forget. And my wife and I both talk to each other. We're like, maybe we should have another kid. I'm like, yeah, it wasn't that bad, was it? But when you're in it, it is just, you. I don't know what it is about when you love something, you forgive it in your memory. Do it again.
No, I've said this many times. It's like having a baby. I've said this in my class. It's like having a baby, and it's awful and difficult, and then you forget, and then and then you what it is. You get excited about the next project. I mean. It's what I find hard is to do a movie that I don't care about. I've done that a couple of times. It's really hard. I just can't muster the whatever to do it.
It's too tough. It's tough enough when you're doing it for something you love. Yeah. Let alone when you don't. Oh God, it's horrible.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about DriverX for me personally, I mean, I didn't write it. Henry wrote it, but I feel that story. I know that story. I'm going through the same thing the character's going through. I mean, it's about a guy who drives for Uber. He's 50 years old, who has been kind of aged out, or technology has disrupted disrupted what he was doing. And now that business doesn't exist anymore. And he is 50 trying to get work. And in a world that is now run by the generation behind him, and with new technologies that created new businesses that he doesn't understand. And, that he was in the music business. He had a record store for 25 years, and that obviously went away. And now he goes, in the beginning of the movie, goes to interview at a kind of, internet music company or whatever. And he has no idea what the hell, I mean, they're never going to hire this guy. And so, that being kind of thrown out, on the curb, so to speak, pun intended, I guess, nice. And having to then, take up in this gig economy is something that, I mean, I can't even drive Uber because my car's too old, but it's like, I mean, I know what it's like. I mean, I'm in a part of the film business that has gone through the same, the same issues. I mean, making indie films at even much higher levels, there's no money in it. I mean, I hate to say that, especially to, on a podcast and in public and stuff, but
you're right.
There's no money in it for anybody. I mean, for lawyers and a few people like that, I mean, you pay your lawyer, they say, well, I got to make at least $5,000 or whatever on any movie or whatever. So there's certain people that make money, but not producers and directors. If you make $1 million film, your fee, $1 million is a ton of money for me. But your fee is like, what is it
50,
for a producer?
Maybe 50 grand?
Oh God, no. No. It would be like 20 or 15.
For the year, for like a year.
No, for the whole movie, which would be 3 years.
Right.
Amortize that over 3 years. It's not a good business, to be in. It's now, if you're a director, obviously you do that because you hope that you're going to be successful, and then you're going to get an agent, and they're going to get you TV directing gigs, and you're going to make another feature that's more money. If you're a producer doing hotels of that director, and I know a lot of producers whose directors have went on and become a big deal, but they're scrapping to try to, because they couldn't get pulled into the studio world with them, and now they're still scrapping trying to make it happen. It's just very difficult to make a living as a producer on indie films. I mean, the world changed for those movies, and there's just less money to make them, and everybody expects you to make them for less money, which I tell my class, look, make it for as little money as possible. I'm going to teach you how to do that, but you now everybody's telling you to do that. I mean, I was at the Film Independent Filmmaker Forum, and there were these foreign salespeople who were like, if your budget's $1.5 million, you better cut it in half. You better make it that movie for $750,000. Well, I would absolutely tell you the same thing, or make it for less than that even.
God, if you make it a $7,
remind you that your budget, your fee as a producer is tied to that budget, and you're going to have to figure out a way to make a living, alongside that. And the sad thing for me, I think, or not sad, but the tough thing for me is that I've never wanted to make any other kind of movie. I love these kind of movies. I go to Sundance. I see as many next movies as I possibly can. I usually see just about all of them at Sundance every year. And I love these kind of movies. This is the kind of movie I like to see, and the kind of movie I like to make. And I don't want to make a Marvel movie or something like that. So it just makes it hard because, it's a very difficult, living. I mean, I found, had to find other things to do to make a living,
And no, it's and I don't want the whole episode to turn into doom and gloom, but it's something that I've preached many times. It is a very it's brutal business. It's very tough to be out there. It's tough to make a living. I just saw a Brian De Palma, the Brian De Palma documentary, and he was saying, he's like, 97% of these kids in film school are not going to make a living.
Yeah.
Like, it's just not going to happen. It was brutal for my time. I can only imagine what it is now. But the thing is, if you're smart, there are ways of doing it. It's not that it's impossible. It's hard. And for those people who understand a lot of aspects of the business, not just the one, it can happen. But it is difficult without question.
Look,
and you got to love to do it.
The thing that I teach a class, and my class is not depressing.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
My class is not designed to be depressing. It's designed to inspire you to go out and make a movie.
Sure.
Because everybody's taking my class wants to make a movie.
Sure.
So I start off the class with, the reality. I mean, I do it in I think a very funny way. Mm-hmm. I try to make it funny. I kind of poll the audience and I ask everybody, are they directors and what kind of movies they want to make and blah, blah, blah. And then I say, who's in this to make money? Who's doing this because they want to make money?
Right.
And then I say, oh, okay, that's great. Raise your hand. That's great. Well, there are actually better ways to make money than filmmaking. And I put this slide up and it's like, investment banking is a better way. I mean, that's the most money I've ever made. And then I go down the list of funny things. And the last one is begging. Begging is a better way to make money than filmmaking. If you're doing this for the money, you're just going to be sad and unsuccessful, and money cannot be the metric for your success. And then I ask everybody, okay, knowing, let's assume that I can predict the future with 100% accuracy, and I tell you that you're not going to be successful doing this. Who would still make their movie? And of course, everybody raises their hand, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody. I'm warning you. I'm 100% correct. I do this with 100% confidence. You will not be successful. Everybody raises their hand. I'm like, okay, so I've told you you're not going to make any money, and you've told me that you want to make your movie no matter what. So great. I'm going to teach you how to make a movie for no money, so that you don't have to worry about the fact that you're not going to get your money back. It's you're going to, whatever money you're going to put into this, it's money that you are happy to lose. Because you're not going to get it back, and I'm going to inspire you to go out and make that movie because you want to make it. And the reason that no budget filmmaking is so great is that if you love making movies, which is something that Henry and I really like to do, you get to do it. I mean, we sat around. The reason that Uber movie happened in the first place was because we sat around a year, 2014, trying to make a bigger budget horror film. That I really liked. Henry wrote it. I thought it was a great script, and we wrote it several times over that year. And financing was just around the corner. It was just about to happen, like twice. Mm-hmm. I couldn't take a trip because we were gonna start shooting, and then the financing fell through like 2 times. And then we never got to make that movie. And it's like, wow, we just spent a year of our lives working pretty hard. With nothing to show for it, nothing, not even a movie. And we always had a movie to show for it,
Mm-hmm.
And so Henry had to start driving Uber because he needed the money. And then, we realized there was a better movie in his experience driving Uber, but then we got to make that movie. And so with us, it's not like we're not as prolific as Joe Swanberg, but, we've managed to rack up several films under our belt. And I love that process. I think probably the shooting of it is probably the part I like the least.
Mm-hmm.
But after that, like post, and certainly once the movie's done, like getting it out in the world, that's just something that I really love. If I like the movie, I think the reason I made movies when I was a little kid and why I, kind of deep passion for doing it is just that feeling. I don't know if it's an insecurity or where it comes from, where you just want to create something and show it to people and get them, and they get excited about what you've created. That's what it is for me. And that's why like that Kickstarter campaign, I love that Kickstarter campaign. I love that I didn't sleep, for 30 days or whatever, but I really enjoyed it because first of all, I made that video and it's not the world's greatest video, but I was proud of it. And I love doing that. I don't get to make films anymore. I'm not a filmmaker. And I got to create materials and I got to be creative and throw that out into the world and see what stuck. And I love that, process. And so I'm hopeful that DriverX will be a movie that people really love. And God, there's nothing better to me than to know I have something that people are going to love and give them a chance to show it to them. And I don't know where that comes from. I've never studied it, but I'm sure a lot of other people have that same feeling that do this, they just love to.
You're an artist. You're an artist in your own way, because that's what artists do. Artists love to create things and let other people see it. Whatever form that might be, as a producer, as a director, as a writer, that's an artist.
Yeah. Well, that's fun, and so, and we, the thing with DriverX, something that I, do on every movie, we do test screenings all throughout the process as we're editing it to test, different things that we're trying on the cut. And we've done several test screenings, and, these are usually like 10 to 20 people tops. And they're often friends and whatever, but, we have them fill out, anonymous, forms and, where we ask some questions and stuff. And the feedback has been, pretty terrific. The kind of consensus is that this film is very topical, that it's really hitting the mark in terms of what's going on right now in this whole, with the Bernie Sanders stuff and the middle class and the gig economy and Uber and all this like stuff. And so, people have said, like, you got to get that movie out now, and obviously, we have to finish it, which we're almost done with the cut. And then we have to, we're trying to get into a film festival. So we'll premiere in a film festival. So it's not, we have to kind of wait for the film festival first to decide, when we're going to premiere. So,
so what's the distribution plan right now for DriverX?
So I think, look, I always, for all my films, I always have like plan A and plan B. And plan A is we're going to get into Sundance or South by Southwest, and some distributor is going to come along and they're going to love the movie and they're going to pay us in advance and they're going to release the movie. And that's, you always hope for that. And I've been involved with films that have that happen at Next Wave and such. But plan B is more likely, and plan B for me is, again, this idea of building up these audiences around the movie. I have some specific ideas that I've come up with that I think in the new year I'm going to have some time to, I'm going to kind of finish with this other movie, Devil's Whisper, that I was hired to produce. I will be able to focus on some of these ideas I have for building up our audience with like ride shares, especially. And in the, let's say I don't know when we'll premiere, but, in the months before we premiere, I'll be working on these different, creating materials that will attract people to our social media platforms, and also to, get their email addresses, get them excited about the movie, build up our list. And then with the idea that maybe there won't be a company that comes around who would that I'd want to hand over the movie to. And then what I would do is I would put together some type of an event theatrical. I would window the film out. I wouldn't do day and date. I would put together a event theatrical myself.
Through Tug or something?
Through what?
Through Tug?
We would rely less on like a Tug and more like, I just went to this, I mentioned I went to this distribution, this little seminar that they did down the street at the Canon building down the street in Hollywood. And these three filmmakers who had small movies that, didn't get big film festival premieres. They played film festivals and won awards and stuff, but not that they didn't get Sundance or something like that. And they were each doing kind of small event theatricals. And one of them was this film, Lee Lu's the director. It's a romance, a road movie romance. And I'm going to forget the title. It's called There Is a New World Out There Somewhere, something like that. It's not quite, I may be off by a word. There's a new world out there somewhere, I think is what it's titled. And I came across her because she's from Houston and I'm from Houston. And I had given to her Seed and Spark campaign. And so I'm on her mailing list and I've been getting all her emails about this little theatrical that she put together, where she basically started with the Seed and Spark supporters she had, and where was the strength in terms of cities? Where were her strengths? And one of them was Houston, because that's obviously had friends and family from Houston.
How did she find out that information?
Oh, you know where these people are coming from.
Okay.
You'll get their you get their addresses, and I mean for most of them, like with my campaign, everybody that I'm mailing something to, I'm going to get their address. I'm going to know where they're from. and I try to know who everybody is anyway. I think everybody personally, and how did you hear about our movie, and try to understand where they're. And when I send my surveys out for Kickstarter, this is something I'm doing now. I ask them, hey, do you want to help us out in some kind of a way, however that might be? And you kind of start to test the waters on their enthusiasm. Do they just want to help you by giving you some money, or are they really interested in like kind of going a little further? And most people, I have 400 and something backers. So let's say that only 10% of them are really, really interested in doing something beyond just giving us money. That's 40 people, 40 people who could really like do some work for me, and help us out, and they'll enjoy it too, for whatever reasons. And so,
for whatever reason,
because they like this material, they love the actor. I mean, there's so many people that gave money because they love, Patrick Fabian, who's terrific, and
he's awesome.
Great, he really is guy, awesome. The nicest, greatest guy I'll ever work with. So
we'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
So she found out, okay, I have a stronghold in New Orleans and Houston and, these certain cities. And so she basically found venues in each city, like to do 1 or 2 screenings. She brought some, she went to all those screenings. She had Q&As. Maybe she had some actor with her. Maybe she had somebody else from the crew with her. She would work with organizations in those cities. Like let's say in Houston, she would work with the filmmaking organization Swamp, which I'm very familiar with. And they would help promote the film, and she would talk about how they made the film to filmmakers who were members of Swamp and, whatever. And so for me, I would build this event theatrical, similarly with, figuring out where do I have strengths? What cities do I have strengths in? Atlanta is a city I would pick because my sister lives there and I can stay there for free. And and I know a lot of people in Atlanta, and I've played the film in the Atlanta film. I played films in Atlanta film festivals, several times, and whatever. And hopefully I would have a supporter or two there. But I have friends there, and I kind of know Atlanta, for instance. And so I would build it probably initially around Uber Lyft drivers. There's a lot of Facebook groups for almost every city has a Facebook group. We would create a screening that would have some utility if you drove. We would offer kind of incentives for people to come. We would have maybe a panel discussion with quote experts, talk about the driving and the difficulties of it, some of the tricks of the trade. We would maybe I would get some kind of a vendor to sponsor a tour in a sense, like a dash cam manufacturer or insurance company or whoever, there are several vendors that are in that world. I would try to build it around that. And we would, have networking and a party, type of thing so that other drivers, I know these drivers because I'm already a member of a lot of Facebook groups, and I kind of see what they're doing. They have meetups and stuff. And because when you're driving, other than maybe when you do the airport run and you're sitting at the airport talking to other drivers, you don't really get a chance to talk to these people to learn this stuff. So, we would have this kind of celebration of being a writer and a driver, at this screening, and create an event around it, and maybe my actor could be at all those screenings. He's certainly going to try because he really is so behind the movie and we would build it around other things too, again, around filmmaking, independent filmmaking, if I can talk about how we made the film and tricks we did and all that kind of stuff. So I would build this kind of theatrical. In the case of Lee Lu's film, she did so well with her few cities that she did that actually, oh my God, I'm going to forget the name. What's the company? Jesus. The company that does they do distribution in kind of like museums and media centers. Emerging Pictures came along and took the film to like another 13 cities because they liked what she was doing. And then what she did is, so you do that little theatrical where you're building up, you're getting reviews, you're building up your list. You're getting, hopefully, you never know how you're going to kind of reach people. I bring do it the old-fashioned way. I bring clipboards and I hand them out and I say, sign up on my mailing list. I did that for Pig all over the world, and I had hundreds of email addresses that way. So then you work either with a distributor. Let's say with her, she's working with Gravitas, or you work with an aggregator like Quiver or Distributor, and you put together your transactional VOD window. And you basically drive, as many people as you can to that transactional window, like iTunes. And hopefully if you've done it right, and I've never done this to the extent that I want to do it this time around. You've built up a big enough list to where when you do premiere the film on iTunes, you first have a list where you can get the pre-sale number up so that you're, whatever that magic number is. I've heard it's 63.
63 people? 63
pre-sales on iTunes will get you on, in the top 10, when the film comes out. I mean, I've heard these different numbers about, trying to get, pre-sales. There's a film called Slash that I also gave to. I've given to probably 120 campaigns. They were working very hard. They did a really great Kickstarter campaign and also very, very strong kind of small self-theatrical and then driving people to a transactional window, in this case, iTunes as well, and going out to their 500 backers and saying, go to our page, go to our iTunes page and pre-buy the movie. And what they did, in fact, to go beyond that, which I'd never seen before, and I want to find out how well this worked, they actually gave people $10 gift cards to do that. So
I was thinking about that myself as you were saying. I'm like, what if we just gave them the money somehow? So it's just a way of marketing.
Yeah, it's a marketing expense. So you give them 400. Maybe that costs you $400 or something. I mean, how much could it possibly cost? And they had a discounted price of $6.99 to pre-buy, and there was like a tiny window that you had to buy it at that price. And so I bought it. I want to support the film. And if they reach that magic number, then they would be, new and noteworthy or whatever the top 10 list on iTunes. And then the rest of the world would find the film as well. Right. Assuming that they had a good piece of key art and a good trailer. Cause iTunes is all about
key art and trailer. Right.
Key art and trailer. So, so we would, try something very similar to that. I know that because I've seen, in the last couple of months, I've seen the guy from Adam from Distributor and this guy from Quiver give presentations, and they give examples of films that you've never heard of. Maybe you've heard of, but most people have never heard of that. That have a topic like, I think one of them was about UFC wrestling or something, where they were able to aggregate an audience relatively easy around that subject matter and got all those people super excited about the film before they opened it, and then drove everybody to their iTunes and did mid to high six figures on iTunes alone because of that. Now, I mean, I think that would be, I'm not saying I think I could do that for our movie, but if I don't need to do that because I didn't spend that kind of money to make the movie. So, so I think that would be my goal, would be to, try to do that. I feel like I have a movie this time where I can do that. Pig was much harder to do that. We tried to do it a little bit, but it was just more difficult. This one's, I think, a little bit easier. I mean, it'll be a ton of work and, whatever, but that's the work I really kind of enjoy doing. So
can you tell me a little bit about No Budget Film School?
Yeah. So No Budget Film School, I started it 11 years ago, almost 12 years ago, which was really just my attempt to kind of, on one level, just monetize a certain information that I had that I wasn't making other money on. But really, I had been doing panels and teaching teaching classes at UCLA Extension and Learning Annex when I was at Next Wave. We had done that. And I'd been doing presentations on digital filmmaking at Next Wave all over the world, actually. And so I was very used to getting in front of people and kind of, we always felt like we were telling people something that other people were giving them misinformation, like about digital filmmaking. Everybody was telling them, "Oh, you can't shoot on a VX1000 or whatever." DVX, and we were like, we put this, presentation together that proved to you how, absolutely you could, and with clips and whatever. And so I did that for several years when I was at Next Wave. And so when I left, and I was, had made True Love, I learned a lot of things on True Love that, I'd never done before, that I was like, wow, I didn't know that could even work. And it worked. And I had this knowledge, plus the knowledge that I had from working at Next Wave, which I think informs most of the class, frankly, is the experience of looking at thousands of movies and knowing what to focus on. And people focus on the wrong things. They think it's all about this when it's really about that, and so kind of prioritizing, because you can't get everything right when you're making a no budget film. You really have to get the key things right. So what are those things, And so I kept hearing this misinformation about shooting on film or about, just shooting with no money. And I was like, do people still don't understand this? And I did a presentation for Filmmakers Alliance that was kind of the proto no budget film school. And, people really liked that. And I thought, I'm going to teach a class. I'll teach a 1-day class. That's everything I know about no budget filmmaking. I'll bring in a couple of guest speakers and I did that one class. It was really successful. I ended up turning it into a 2-day class. And, I do it, I've done it in different cities. But mainly I do it here in Los Angeles once or twice a year over at Raleigh Studios. It's a weekend. I've partnered with my old college roommate, Tom Provost, who's a terrific guy and a really smart filmmaker. And also he's an editor and a screenwriter and a director. And he also terrific instructor. He teaches graduate screenwriting at Pepperdine, and he does a second weekend called Cinema Language, which we kind of put together as kind of a 2-weekend, immersion in no budget filmmaking.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
And, I teach that class. And so part of it is, I would say, kind of philosophical. Like you have to understand the universe you're working in before you can begin to start making a film. So I try to teach them that. No budget filmmaking is different from studio filmmaking. The rules that I cover these kind of 2 big philosophical ideas in the first part of the class. And then it becomes, very nuts and boltsy, we go through, how to deal with SAG on, when you have no money. I mean, basically the second day is all about, I'm assuming you have a little bit of money, but not the normal amount of money it takes to make a movie. So I'm going to go through all the different kind of categories, cast and crew and equipment and insurance and, permits and locations and, whatever. And we're going to talk about, if you have no money, how do you kind of deal with all these different things? And it's, it's based on, my own experience. If I make mistakes, I get to teach them, which is good because otherwise they're just mistakes that you suffer from. And also, I bring in great guest speakers who are also, who have done this and done it successfully and who can kind of corroborate what I'm saying. And, I've had everybody from, oh my God, I've had Joe Carnahan, David Gordon Green and Ty West and Destin Creighton and
you had Joshua too, Joshua Caldwell?
Josh Caldwell.
Yeah, he was just on the show. He's great.
I mean, I've been doing it for so long, I can't. It's a long list. Jody Hill. Anyway, all kinds of people. Jay Duplass. Who've come in and really just, it's a room. They're in a small. It's not a small room, but they're in a room and they speak the truth in that room. I videotape them. And I remember when I did Jay Duplass, he said something. I was kind of shocked that he was that honest about it. And he came up to me after. He's like, "You're not going to put that stuff out on the internet." I'm like, no, don't worry. I taped them, but I haven't actually, this is one of the things I, want to do. And I have the time is, start to get this stuff out. I've got all my guest speakers, Chris Nolan, all these people on tape. And I want to start kind of getting some of that stuff out, kind of, free content out there. It's just hours of footage of this stuff. But
you have Chris Nolan as well?
Well, I did a screening with Chris about 10 years ago. I had this thing called No Budget Film Club, which I'd love to kind of resurrect. I did a couple of screenings of No Budget Film Club, which was essentially a screening of, it was like a no budget, we're going to screen a no budget film from a director who's gone on to become big. And we're going to, have the director there and he's going to tell all the dirty secrets, what it took to kind of make that film. And then, how that film kind of launched his career or her career. And I did one with Chris. We screened Following at the Egyptian right before The Prestige was about to come out. And it was a great screening and a lot of fun and had Peter moderate the discussion. And then I did one with David Gordon Green where right before, I think Snow Angels, I'm not sure which film was about to come out. And then, we screened George Washington and that was fun. We gave away props from the movie. We gave away a dinner for two with one of the actors from his movie, which was dinner at McDonald's, it's kind of no budget film school. Anyway, and I'm still very good friends with the girl that won that prize. She actually had a great time with the actor and stuff. But, so I have that discussion on tape talking about following. And following is a big part of my class. I worked on that film. I know a lot about how it was made, and it's a perfect case study for the first two big ideas that I teach in my class in the first half of the first day. So I kind of teach these ideas, and then I use following to kind of show the real world way to apply those two big ideas. So
now, if you were going to give advice to a filmmaker just starting on the business, what would it be besides run away?
Yeah, no, I would never tell them.
No, I would never. No, me neither. I'm joking.
I mean, I think. Obviously, there's never been. You can say this every minute, and then the next minute you can say it again. There's never been a better time to make movies. I mean, really, I used to say that. We said that back in 2000. We used to say that because the PD 150 had come out,
or the DVX 100A came out. Yeah, exactly.
The PAL PD 150 had come out, and we were like, "There's never been a better time.
Let's go, just go." Yeah, right.
My God, now obviously 1,000 times better than that. But there's never been a better time. Tomorrow there will again be a never better time to make something. It's so easy to make something. I think you have to create restrictions and limitations because otherwise you don't know where to start. In my class, I talk a lot about limitations and how good they are and where to create your limit, where to find your limitations, create rules around your limitations. And then those are rules that you live by. So never been a better time. It's easy to get your film out into the world. I mean, to get it on a platform is nothing. To get anybody to see it is much more difficult.
That's where the rub is. Yeah.
If you're successful, if you weren't successful 15 years ago, then no one was going to see your film. But when you were successful 15 years ago, people saw it. It got into Sundance, and it got there were only it got out there. But now there's a million things out there. There's every film that ever was made is out there. So
you're right.
Your film is competing with Citizen Kane, because I can just as easily go watch Citizen Kane online. Plus, every video that people post on YouTube or whatever, there's just so much shit out there that is competing for your time. And so, my advice would be, if you want to be a filmmaker and you want to make something, do it. Don't wait around. Mark Duplass has said this and gets a lot of press for it. Don't wait for the cavalry.
Yeah, cavalry's not coming.
They're not coming. I said it in a different way before he did. With when I created my postcard for No Budget Film School in 2005, it was like I had this picture on my website that says Holly won't instead of Hollywood. It's a Hollywood sign, but it's Holly won't. And it's like, look, don't wait around the phone for these people to come and sweep you up and give you a career. It's not going to happen. You have to make it for yourself. And so never been a better time to do that. Do it cost effectively. But what you have to do is it's like you got to hit them where they're not, the studios will create certain things. You've got to create something so different from what other people are doing. It has to be so bold, and bold can be defined in a lot of different ways. But if you're not creating something really unique that's just sticking out like a sore thumb, no one's going to notice. And there's a quote that I use in my class that one of my students who became one of my star students. I have a few of these star students who took my class and then went on to make a really successful film. This gentleman named Blake Robbins, sorry, who was an actor before he took my class. He took the class. He went on to write and direct and act in and produce his own no budget film that got into Slamdance and was in competition at Slamdance, and then got distribution. And now he's just finished directing a $3 million film that he was hired to direct. He's now a real director, from that experience. Mm-hmm. He came back and was a guest speaker in my class. So he kind of circle of life, came back around, and he had written several articles about his experience making this film. And one of them, he quotes, in terms of with regard to making films, he quotes something that Quentin Tarantino said, which is, independent films are like waves on a beach. They just keep rolling in. If you want to get noticed, and I'm kind of paraphrasing a paraphrase, you have to blow up the beach, blow up the fucking beach, is what he said.
Nice. Don't
make another wave. Blow it up. Don't even think about waves. Bomb the beach, And so I don't know if that means anything for people or not, but hopefully that it kind of connects, in just how different, you have to be. And look, I mean, I know from DriverX, I mean, we applied to Sundance. We're alumni. I was able to tell them ahead of time, hey, I mean, I'm sending you the movie, and they gave us an extension. They knew it was coming. Yeah. We didn't get into Sundance.
Right.
And the reason I don't really know why we didn't get into Sundance, but I have to think, because I go every year. This will be my 22nd year, I think, this year coming up. I mean, I look at the films that got in, and in the films that are conventional, which I would say ours is relatively conventional movie. It's not experimental. It's told in a conventional way. It's not idiosyncratic as well. It's not super arty film. If you're not making a kind of unconventional or super edgy or super arty film, you're not going to get into Sundance if you're a no budget film, if you're a low budget film. The films that are like that get into Sundance are made at higher budget level. They're made perfectly. They're made with $2 or $3 million with stars, and by filmmakers that have they're not on their first film, and they're in the premiere section and sometimes the competition section. The films that get into Sundance, and there are still films that get into Sundance that are made on tiny budgets, but those are films that are really like doing something different. And I think of a film like The Fits from last year, which was a terrific movie, not commercial at all. No one's going to really see it. I mean, it got on the cover of Filmmaker magazine.
We'll be right back after a word from our sponsor. And now back to the show.
But it's a very arty film, but very different. And that film got a lot of attention, even though it's not commercial and very few people will see it, because it was so unique and so well done. And so you have to do something like that, whatever that is. I mean, for you, the filmmaker, your uniqueness is different than someone else's uniqueness. And I actually go into a lot of that in my class, but I feel like that's what you should be doing. I mean, look, if you want to, make something for yourself and it's conventional and make it as a showcase, for a bigger film that you want to do, that's fine. You won't get into Sundance or South by Southwest, but that's fine. There are still other film festivals you can play, but don't expect that film to get out in a huge way, or make you money, but it might do what you need it to do. But if you really want to hit the bullseye, I think, try to do something really different. I mean, it needs to be something organic that that comes from you. Right. It's not, you're not like just trying to be different for different sake. You're coming up with something. I mean, maybe it's just telling a story. Maybe you come from a small town that is really different that we've never seen before, and there's a story that comes out of that place that no one's ever heard. And it could be a relatively conventionally told story, but it's just a story that we just never heard before. Sundance always has those films, or it might be a film that's told backwards, like Memento, or is doing something really radical with the way it looks or something like that.
Or Pulp Fiction that changes structure or something like that. No, what is these are the last two questions are the two questions I always ask all my guests. What is the lesson that took you the longest to learn, whether in the film business or in life?
At some point you do have to make money. I'm just now learning that. I'm like, wow, I should have started that process years ago.
Yeah.
I don't know. Can I still make money now? I don't know. I mean, I've never cared so much about making money. I mean, not that I have any problem with money. It's nice, and but I don't.
It's not your main motivation.
I've never looked around and said, where is the money going, and how can you make money? And I'm going to get in that business and do that thing. And I mean, kind of starting doing that now a little bit. Mm-hmm. Like, I think I'm going to get in the healthcare business because, man, you pay doctors a lot of money, whatever. But, so I don't know. That's a bad one. I wouldn't say that one. The hardest lesson.
Not the hardest, the one that took you the longest to learn.
Gosh, it's just, I don't know. I mean, maybe it is that one. I don't know.
That's a good one to. No, honestly, that is a good one.
I hate kind of just sitting on that money thing. I mean, even though that is my thing with No Budget Film School, I guess. But
it's a good answer purely because a lot of people don't realize that till it's too late, and they just they go down this long path. And I always tell everybody, I'm like, the word is show business, and the word business has twice as many letters as the word show. And there's a reason for that. And that's, you have to understand both aspects of the art and the business. If you don't, you'll never make it.
Yeah.
You'll never make it. Now, what are your three favorite films of all time?
Oh, wow. Okay. Maybe that's a little easier, although just like without even thinking, I'm just going to say Chinatown, Godfather. I'm again not even thinking really about it, and Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Nice, great combination, by the way.
Chinatown and
that's a fun night.
Pretty close.
That's a fun night. If we sit there and watch all of them, that's a good night. Now, where can people find you online?
So, No Budget Film School is nobudgetfilmschool.com, and we didn't talk about it now, but I will say it. That I built that website in 2005, and it is the same website it was. I mean, I've added content, but looks like 1995. Yeah. So, if you're interested in subscribing to my newsletter and getting knowing when the class is, go to that website. Don't be shocked. I know what good websites look like. I go to them all the time. I've been busy producing movies the last several years, and I'm going to have a new website. And when I do, it's going to have great content. I've already have all this pent up content, like not just the video content I mentioned, but a lot of stuff that I've written that I haven't even posted, like case studies of no budget films that I've been doing for the last 10 years that I've never posted. I have a lot of them on the website currently, old ones, but I don't post as much now because no one goes to my website because it's so old and so bad. I mean, I if you're on my newsletter list, then you get stuff. I send you, I send stuff that I write and whatever. But I don't post. It's kind of a dying on the vine website, but there is stuff on there. There's a lot of. I mean, I'm very proud of a lot of the things I've written. I've written about Kickstarter. I've written 3 articles I'm very proud of about Kickstarter. I've written about doing feedback screenings. That's an article that I'm wrote a few years ago that I don't even know if there's a better article out there about, because I've looked for it in the past. When I wrote it, there was no article about how to do like feedback screenings while you're editing your film. So there's good stuff on there. It's just older, evergreen kind of material. That's one place to find me. DriverXmovie.com is where you can sign up for the. There's not much on that website, but the Kickstarter video that you were so kind to say you liked is on there. And our page, but that's easy to find, DriverX on Kickstarter. But DriverXmovie.com, DriverXmovie is our Twitter handle, and our Instagram and Facebook, I think, Facebook is DRVRX. I couldn't switch it to DriverX Movie. Anyway,
no worries.
So I'd already come up with DRVRX, which I thought was cool, but not as good for branding. But you can sign up on the DriverX website on our mailing list, and I'm going to start, sending out. Haven't really done it yet because I'm very secretive, or I don't know if secretive is the right word. I don't like sending out like pieces of the movie, when they're half baked, but I kind of promised that I would send out some stuff. And I think there's a couple things that we've cut out of the movie that, might, I don't know. I always get a little weird about sending out stuff like that, but I may send out a few clips and stuff, but there's definitely we're going to be creating a lot of content going forward, that I think some of it will be geared toward, driving for Uber, like tips and stuff for that. We're going to interview some Uber drivers who are successful and create these kind of tip videos. We'll also be interviewing our lead actor and some of the other actors and ourselves, and talking about filmmaking stuff, and using having B-roll from behind the scenes footage and stuff like that. I've got a lot of that stuff. I just haven't really used it yet because we've been focused on the movie, and I've been finishing this other movie. So that stuff will start coming out, and if you're on the mailing list, you'll get to see that stuff. Perfect.
Well, Mark, man, thank you so much for your time on being on the show. You dropped a lot of great knowledge bombs on the tribe, so I appreciate it.
Well, this was really my pleasure. I really enjoyed it. Thanks so much.
Mark is a wealth of information, guys. I really hope you got a bunch out of that, bunch of knowledge bombs off of this conversation. I really love Mark, and hopefully we're going to hook up at Sundance this year so we can catch a cup of coffee and freeze our asses off while we're over there. And guys, I have some really insane news, but I can't tell you yet. I'm dying to tell you guys, but I can't tell you anything yet. I'm just going to tease you guys for a couple more weeks until I can finally release the information. But I've got so much cool stuff coming for you guys, and it looks like I might be doing something super cool that no one's ever done before, and it's going to show you a process in the business that no one's ever seen behind the scenes of. So I know it's very cryptic and very exciting, but you'll need to stay tuned. And it's something that we're going to be releasing within hopefully the next month or two. So keep your eyes out for sure. And guys, if you enjoyed this podcast episode, please share it with everybody. You please tweet it, please Facebook it, please Instagram it, whatever. Get it out there. Share it with as many people as you can. It really means a lot to me. And thank you so much for all your support. Every time you guys visit any of our sponsors or obviously buy any of their products, it helps support the show. So I greatly, greatly appreciate all of the massive amount of support that we get from you guys. Thank you so much. It is really hard to keep this show going, especially at the beatnik pace of 2 brand new episodes a week and a third possible Throwback Friday that I'm going to be doing more of in the future because we have so many cool podcast episodes from the past. I don't want them to get lost, and there's a lot of new listeners who have not been able to get access or have found all these old cool podcast episodes with a lot of great information. So thank you again so much for all of that, guys. Don't forget to head over to freefilmbook.com. That's freefilmbook.com to download your free film audiobook from Audible. And guys, I'll talk to you next week. Keep that hustle going. Keep that dream alive, and I'll talk to you soon.
Thanks for listening to the Indie Film Hustle podcast at indiefilmhustle.com. That's INDIEFILMHUSTLE.com.